Well, I did it again. I got you to enter laughing. Okay. Hey, Ann, how you doing? Welcome back, everybody, for another installment of Ask Eddie and Ann. I got you again.
You did. Hello, everyone.
All I have to do is do a funny countdown, and
You
and
do it.
Ann cracks up, and that's it. So, but nobody ever hears the countdown. They just come in and see you laughing. So that's it. Ann, how are you?
Good. I just wrapped up writing the TV listings for April. In case people don't know, on our website, filmnoirfoundation.org, we have a news page, and in that news page is TV listings. So the TV listings are for all the film noirs that are playing on TCM each month. So even like this month in April, when they're celebrating Warner Brothers 100, and you don't. Noir Alley is not on. There's still plenty of noirs every month besides Noir Alley. So I'd love if people checked it out. So today I was watching Columbo while I was doing them. And
Very good.
it was A Friend Indeed, which is one of my favorite episodes because the murderer is actually the police commissioner. And so
And
Columbo's
who is the actor who plays the villain in this one?
Richard Kiley.
Richard Kiley. Aha.
Yeah,
Okay.
so Columbo's knows that it's him and somehow has to get the best of the police commissioner. It's really fun.
And have you oh God, I'm so bad. I'm drawing a blank. I was gonna say, have you watched the new show with Natasha Lyonne where she is like the female Columbo?
No, I haven't. Poker Face, I haven't watched it
Poker
yet.
Face, yeah, that's it. Poker
Yeah,
Face.
well, no, I'll definitely have to check it out because I really like her. And I didn't realize that was the premise of the show. I just saw that she was in something new.
I mean, it's not exactly the
Of course,
premise of the
yeah.
show, but it's clear that Columbo was an inspiration for it because she just is a pest and she just doesn't go away. And but she's just a kind of a loner drifter, very much. This is very much in keeping with this. We're at a time now where there's a lot of gender reversals in
Yeah,
the genre stuff, and so this is typically a role that would have been played by a guy.
yeah,
Then came Bronson crossed with Columbo or something,
yeah,
but now it's a female protagonist, and it's great. It's really interesting. She's terrific, very very distinctive. I was just ticked off because I watched the first. Everybody was talking to me about it, and I watched
yeah,
the first two episodes, and then the service that it's on. You know, now you got to pay. We're giving you the first two free. Now you got to pay to watch the rest of it. And I'm getting a little sick and tired of the way these streaming outfits, you know, that whole con job about how people are just going to have more and more options for
yeah,
consumers. And then, you end up, if you want to get all these services, it's going to cost you like $300 a month to get them all,
yeah,
and it's just ridiculous. It's idiotic. And I don't really have the time to do what some people do, which is, well, I get the free trial and I binge watch it and then I cancel and I
yeah.
move on. It's like, oh, I wish I had time to sort all that out. I just kind of forget about it. And so anyway, I've only watched the first two episodes, but it was really good. It was great to see Adrian Brody play a villain.
Yeah.
Was good. So anyway,
Yeah.
uh, that's all. Just a little detour.
Yeah. And for me, with the streaming services, basically, I'm on a family account for Netflix. So I have that. And then someone gifted me MHC. And then I just got like a free month. I'm just going to keep it a Viaplay, which is all Nordic stuff. So they have
Oh, okay.
including some Danish films they've been trying to hunt down before, which I've never seen. And so I'm very excited. So I'll probably keep that one. But I mean, I'm basically just realizing that I just watch the foreign stuff. So there's not really a point for me to have like other stuff because I'm just not that interested in almost anything else. I'm just realizing that's just kind of what I'm
Right.
watching.
All right. Oh well.
Oh,
We've I've given enough publicity to some of these networks like
right.
MHZ, which I love, and
Yeah.
of course I have the Criterion channel,
Yeah.
which is just fantastic. And one or two of the mainstream ones are all I can manage. I think I don't get HBO Max for free, even though that's the company I work for.
They should
So
give it to you.
that's okay.
That's okay. Okay, ready to start in questions?
Yep. Let's do it.
Okay. This first question is from Pete from sunny Sydney, Australia. What do you think of the methodology used by the Academy to determine inclusion for the In Memoriam during the Oscars broadcast? And is it possible to submit names for inclusion? And do you think Marsha Hunt should have been included?
What do I think of the methodology used by the Academy? I think they should drop the whole thing. I think they should just stop doing it because they never get it right. As long as they have a performer who performs the thing live, it's always going to require a certain amount of attention paid to the performer, which I think is kind of ridiculous. No, I'm not being insulting to the performers at all. I just don't think that's a wise idea, and I don't think it works because you're looking at all these people who've passed away. Some of them you don't even know that they've gone, and then all of a sudden they cut back to, in this case it was Lenny Kravitz at the piano, and it's like it kind of ruins the reverie and the melancholy of the whole thing when suddenly it's like, Lenny Kravitz in front of a million, people viewing audience, whatever. And I don't know that there is a methodology. I will only say this because I don't want to get in too much trouble. I don't mind if, what is Sam Spade?
A reasonable amount of trouble.
I don't mind a reasonable amount of trouble. But they don't make mistakes.
Yeah.
At the Academy when they leave people out. If they leave somebody out, they knew they should have gone in, and they made the decision not to put them in.
Yeah.
There are nobody is overlooked. They are omitted.
Yeah.
For obvious reasons when you think about it, right? I mean, they're fitting it to a song. The song has a certain length of time. They figured out how much time it takes to leave a person's image on the screen for it to even register. It's just like, if you're playing with your laptop, your iPad or whatever it is, and they have the slideshow function.
Yeah.
It's like you can time it to a piece of music, and the more you try to fit in, the shorter the images become until it doesn't register because you're reading somebody's name if you don't know who they are. So it doesn't work. The whole concept doesn't work. And then, of course, they have to be, if somebody is a lifelong member of the Academy and they pass away, they're going to include them even if nobody in the world knows who they are. If, they handled payroll for somebody, they're going to get included, while Anne Heche is not included and Marsha Hunt is not included. And I won't even start as to how many people this past year, right? Paul Sorvino was not included. And the people who watch on TV, they're not really in it for the industry. They're in it for the performers.
Yeah.
So they don't care to look at some makeup person or some, unit production manager who has 500 credits to their name. Yeah. They want the star who passed away, right? So everyone will always be disappointed, and it's a no-win situation. So I really don't understand why they don't just stop doing it. It doesn't matter. It only brings grief to everybody. So there you go. Or put it on a website. Put it on a website and do it right.
Yeah.
And then just say, there it is, right? Drive traffic to the Academy website.
Yeah.
By saying that's where you'll see our In Memoriam, and then there's no time limit.
Yeah.
Then you can just remember everybody there. If anybody from the Academy watching, there's my advice. You don't even have to pay me for it. Thank you.
I was not expecting that passionate of a response from you when I saw this question.
I just hear this from so many people, and I go on the rare occasions I go on social media, like when I was around the Oscars, that's all I saw
Yeah.
was people just complaining about who got left off. And it's at a certain point, it's like, enough already.
Yeah.
I mean, from both sides, I've had
Yeah.
it from
Yeah.
both sides.
Yeah. No,
I mean, there are
yeah.
very, very practical reasons why they make these decisions. And
Yeah.
because of that, somebody's nose is always going to be out of joint. And I can tell you, Pete and Sunny Sydney, there is no point in attempting to campaign or lobby for anyone's inclusion. It is meaningless. It would never happen. I know people who lobbied to make sure that Marsha Hunt was in the In Memoriam segment. It amounted to nothing.
No.
So there you go. Okay.
Question 2.
This is our pal Michael Johnson in Post Falls, Idaho. Eddie mentioned possibly looking into whether there were any elements left for the Anne Savage film. Well, it's not called Apology. It's called Apology for Murder. So it could be restored. There is a 16 millimeter print at UCLA. I know that, but we like to get something better than a 16 millimeter print. The Lady Confesses should also be looked at for potential restoration. Not only does it have an excellent female protagonist played by Mary Beth Hughes, but who doesn't want to preserve a film where Beaver Cleaver's eventual TV father plays a drunk? I'm going to tell you, Michael, it's not high on our list of criteria for restoring a film. Is Hugh Beaumont be drunk? But I get what you're saying. I mean, that was like in the Argyle Secrets. There were so many, Beaver Cleaver's mother was in that one.
Mm-hmm.
So that's always fun, but it's a byproduct of the value. Given how hard it was to find the elements to restore Detour, what are the odds of rescuing films from a now defunct independent movie company? Maybe not as bad as you would think. I mean, PRC, the same company that did Detour, did The Lady Confesses. Mary Beth Hughes is pretty good. She's a good, sexy femme fatale type. She's great in, the Anthony Mann picture with your hero Dan Duryea, The Great Flammarion with Erich von Stroheim.
Yeah.
Mary Beth Hughes is really good in that.
Yeah.
I mean, I can look into it. I mean, I think it's just a little bit over an hour. The Lady Confesses. An Apology for Murder, which also has Hugh Beaumont in it. If I found 35 millimeter elements to that, I would not really hesitate to restore it. I know there's a 16, and these days you can, if you want to digitally restore a 16 millimeter, you can and get it to the point where, it's watchable. I mean, the challenge now is a lot of these things as you find less and less high quality, if you find lesser quality original elements, the challenge is that now everybody's expectation is to see these things in beautiful, high definition restorations and things. And if you can't restore it to that level, then if people watch the restoration on those devices without accommodating the lower quality of something, then it just looks bad. It looks pixelated and bad, and it's not worth the trouble you go through to do it. So it is a little bit of a race against time. But Michael, I thank you for the recommendation. I mean, The Lady Confesses it was not on my list of things to look for, but honestly, I saw The Great Flammarion again recently in a pretty good, looked like somebody found a fairly decent copy and did a nice digital. I don't think it was a restoration. They just did a really good digital transfer of the film that was pretty watchable online. And it reminded me of how good she is in that film. And so, that's a possibility. Thank you for the suggestion, Michael.
Yeah. And this next one is from Donna and Dave in Chicago. We thought El Vampiro Negro was great. About a half hour into it, we spotted a brief shot of Chicago, the Wrigley Building, the Michigan Avenue Bridge, 2 buses with Chicago on the side, and a Schlitz sign. Do you know what happened?
Yes, I know exactly what happened. The same studio that made El Vampiro Negro made Native Son. Richard Wright's Native Son that was made in Buenos Aires, except for some parts of the film where a crew actually went to Chicago and shot second unit footage because, of course, Native Son is set in Chicago, and there was an attempt to,
Yeah.
make it look like it was Chicago. And so what happened was when Roman Vignoli Barreto made El Vampiro Negro, he specifically didn't want it to be set in Buenos Aires. He wanted it to be set in like a mythological city of the night. So sometimes it looks like Prague, sometimes, and
Uh-huh.
so when they were doing the manhunt scenes, they borrowed a bunch of clips from Native Son where the cops are storming into the tenement building looking for the guy, and there were just some shots of Michigan Avenue and the Wrigley Building and all that they just borrowed to put in the film uh, because they just didn't care. I mean, it's weird. You'll notice that the buses in El Vampiro Negro don't have destinations on the front of the bus because he took them off so they wouldn't read with recognizable stops in Buenos Aires. So and he consciously aimed the camera at storefronts that had different languages. Like there's a French storefront and a German storefront that he chose the location specifically for that reason. So it's kind of interesting. But that's why suddenly you think you're in South America and then you're in Chicago. That's why.
Oh.
Okay, Kathy wants to know our thoughts on season 2 of Perry Mason on HBO Max. She is still really enjoying it. It's the noirist thing on right now since since I'm on a 2-month hiatus. Well, there you go. And she duly notes that Terrence Blanchard's music is spot on too. Anne, have you seen Perry Mason?
I've not seen any of it.
Not the first season or the second?
Nope.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, moving right along then. No, I like it. I like it, and I do recommend it.
Yeah.
I liked the first season with reservations because I thought the first season was trying too hard. Uh, they are, and it took me a little while to get used. Took me a little while to get used to Matthew Rhys as Perry Mason, because Raymond Burr is Perry Mason.
Yeah.
That's all
Yeah.
there is to
No.
it,
Yeah. Yeah.
So it took a little while to, and the first season is like his origin story,
Mm-hmm.
like how this World War I veteran who's kind of down on his luck, and he's lost the family farm and he's pretty destitute. How he becomes Perry Mason, he's like a low rent detective. He's not a lawyer at all. He actually goes to law school in the first season
Yeah.
to study law. And you meet Hamilton Berger and you meet Della Street and all. And of course, it's very much reworked for a modern audience,
Yeah.
right? Della's a lesbian. Paul Drake is a black cop who he enlists to do. And the first season, it felt like they're shoehorning all this stuff in to be contemporary and modern and put a new, a revisionist spin on it. But by the second season, that stuff is all kind of settled in.
Yeah.
And everybody's kind of become a real character. Della's great. Della's a great character. She's a lesbian in this one, right?
Yeah.
And she's just terrific. But more than that, I love the depiction of her as how hard she has to work, because she's probably the better lawyer than Perry, but she can't do it, right? Women aren't allowed. So she has to just be his assistant. And so it's a very, very well thought out character. And I really like the guy, Chris Chalk, who plays Paul Drake. He's got a gravity. And your boy is in it, Shea Wiggum. He's terrific in it. and but I just think the second season so far is holding together a little better. They're really leaning hard into the noir atmospherics, almost a little too much.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
there isn't a window that doesn't have light streaming through the Venetian blinds
Yeah.
in full on Ridley Scott Blade Runner mode. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just. But the production design on that show is tremendous, just tremendous. They use wonderful paint. They paint the sets with. I'm trying to read the credits to see where the paint comes from
Oh, wow.
because all the hallways and rooms and everything are painted in this beautiful palette of kind of like this green in my office here, and then they have like blue like that and like a dusky orange color on the walls and stuff. They're really playing up the Southern California light.
Yeah.
Like everything is really burnished. You got to be careful. You can overdo it and make it too stagey and perfect, but so far I'm digging it. And it blows my mind that these actors are all British.
Yeah.
Right? Like also the I think her name is Juliet Rylance or something. I think that's her name, who plays Della. She's British, and Matthew Rhys is British. And to hear them talk, not in character, it's kind of mind-boggling how he just becomes this totally, he has this American accent
Yeah.
that is just so perfect. But the Brits are good at that.
Yeah. Is Reese actually Welsh?
He's Welsh, correct?
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. Not British. He's Welsh.
Yeah.
Thank you for correcting me on that.
You're welcome. A lot of great actors come from Wales. It's like a real pipeline to incredible actors.
Yeah, he's really grown on me. I like his performance, and I do agree with Kathy that Terrence Blanchard's score is just tremendous. I mean, I think more than most of. If I had to pick like a modern composer to do a noir, like a classic noir score, it'd probably be Terrence Blanchard. His score for Spike Lee's The 25th Hour is really good too. So anyway, it's terrific. It would be worth. I hope they put out a soundtrack album because I would definitely get that soundtrack album.
Okay, so Kathleen from Chicago, have you seen Decision to Leave? South Korean director Park Chan-wook's acclaimed neo-noir. Imogen Sarah Smith, noir expert and frequent contributor to Noir City, and now the editor of Noir
now the editor-in-chief
City.
of the yes.
Loved it. So did I. It reminded me of Vertigo and of Wong Kar-wai, but it's also very much its own thing. If you've seen it, I'm curious to know your thoughts, especially about how it relates to the noirs of the past.
Have you seen it, Anne?
I have not.
Oh, okay. Well, I have seen it, and I did like it, but I'm going to confess that I need to watch it again because I realized I was watching something really good, but I wasn't in a position to be 100% attentive to it at the time I was watching it. I just felt like everybody's talking about this. I need to watch it. So I was writing some scripts and doing some work while I watched it. And about 2/3 of the way through, I realized I have missed a lot.
Yeah.
Because there is a lot going on in this movie that you have to pay very close attention to. So I confess that some of it went past me, but I am eager to return to it because I could tell that it was a very engrossing unless you're on deadline.
Right. And I would like to watch it just because I've been getting into a little into Korean film, but I just watched on Netflix The Glory, which is a Korean sort of it ran one season and it's kind of hard. So I would consider it like a single story kind of thing about this woman who was horrifically abused by her classmates in high school. I mean, it was torture. It wasn't bullying. And so she's concocted this like huge plan of vengeance. And she's like 35 at the time when the story starts. And it's just incredible. and evidently I was watching stuff on it. The woman that wrote it is evidently like I consider one of the best writers in television in Korea. But it's a real, I mean, but I'll be honest with you. I fast forwarded through almost the entire first episode because of the scenes of her being tortured by her classmates was just too much for me because so warning on that. Like I said, I just found up, I got the gist of it. I just didn't want to watch it. But the rest of it's just really good because I mean, she's sort of out on her own at 16 and she has to like work in a laundry to put her through school and she becomes a school teacher and then she like gets dirt on the head of the school system in South Korea to blackmail him into placing her in the school where the sort of lead person who bullied her daughter is in school.
Okay.
So I mean,
Okay.
that's how, and that is just one element of her vengeance. Like you can't, she's like a mastermind, and part of what she does is a great symbolism as she learns to play Go. And the reason why she does that is that her enemies, I'll just call her that, husband is very rich and powerful and is obsessed with the game Go. And so he plays like one game of Go with her and is like completely transpired by the way she plays Go, which is such a nice thing. It's not because she's beautiful or this or that. I don't want to give too much away, but like I said, it's just like layers on layers and layers. And all the characterization is really good. Like all these characters are completely believable. And, there's times when she'll have a traumatic, an actual PTSD episode, which is really great because that's what really happens with trauma. I just highly recommend it. I was just riveted by it. And it's also, once again, which I see in a lot of Korean stuff, at least stuff I've watched, is it's also a commentary about the class system there too, because basically the people that tortured her in high school got away with it because they had money and she was poor,
I see this as a common denominator in a lot of Korean films. It sounds great. It sounds very much like a Cornell Woolrich story. It sounds like The Bride Wore Black or Rendezvous in Black or something, where like, devising devious ways to get close to these people that she wants to take revenge on. It's
yeah, I love that you said that because I totally didn't make that connection before, but you're right. No wonder I liked it so much.
Well, that's the noir element to it, right? I mean, I think that's saying it's called Glory.
The Glory.
The Glory.
The Glory, and it's on Netflix, and I highly, highly recommend it.
Okay, cool. I'm definitely going to check that out. How many episodes is it?
It's like split in 2 seasons, so I think it was like maybe 8 episodes and then 6 episodes.
And they're hour-long episodes?
Yeah. And just like I said, the writing is really, really good. So I kind of want to check out other things that this woman's written that wrote that, because that was an excellent story.
It's so interesting. If you had told people like 25 years ago that in 25 years in the future, we would be watching like 8 and 10-hour movies.
Yeah.
Right? It's like you say, you mean a television series? And it's like, no, it's on your TV, but it's actually like a super long movie that's just divided up into chapters like a book.
Yeah.
It's like, who would have thought,
Or that you would have this much access to foreign stuff.
Yeah.
Especially, I mean, we all thought,
right? We all thought Fassbinder was nuts when he made Berlin Alexanderplatz, and it was like 8 hours long. And it's like, who the hell is going to watch that?
Exactly.
Well, he was way ahead of his time.
He was. Yeah.
All right. So, okay, Kathleen, thank you for that question. Mike says, in your book, Dark City, you linked the Hollywood studio system to the rise and flourishing of film noir in the 40s. Yes, I do. Of course, the films were produced out of that system, but I think you are claiming more, that the moods and substance of noir films were in part generated out of the studio system and how it treated actors, directors, writers, and others. Could you say more about that? Well, I think that is the entire point of Dark City. Thank you for recognizing it, Mike, because I mean, at the very end of the book, I say you should have figured out by now the Dark City is Hollywood.
Yeah.
And And I really do think that the film noir movement happened at the time it did, because that was when all of these very influential factors had this confluence that ensured that there would be this explosion of noir, which
Yeah.
is why I think it's fruitless for people to say, so what was the first film noir? And they try to track it back, and they keep going back further and further. There's all this stuff made in the pre-code era that's pretty noir, so aren't those the first noirs? Wasn't Underworld, von Sternberg's Underworld, wasn't that the first noir? Oh no, we can keep going back. Sunrise was the first one. It's like, no. There are noir-ish stories always, 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 back to the Bible.
Yeah.
But it was the explosion of it as an artistic movement was precisely because of what was happening in Hollywood at that time, right? The competitiveness of the business, the uncertainty of the business, the way actors and writers were shabbily treated. They were given everything on the one hand, like you get the brass ring, but there was a trapdoor that went along with it. The self-destructiveness of Hollywood. I was just writing a thing the other day about it's kind of shocking to realize how young a lot of these people died, a lot of these performers. I think it kind of hit me when I realized that I am older than William Holden when he died.
Yeah.
I'm 64 years old. William Holden died when he was 63.
Yeah.
Do I look
young,
do
Eddie.
I look like William Holden looked when he was 63? He looked like he was 83.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a hard life, and it was a lot of booze. I mean, a lot of drinking because of the pressures of that business. And, people didn't have all this, these secrets to eternal youth that they obsess over now.
Yeah.
There were no Gwyneth Paltrow's in Hollywood back then. So, but that's a big part of it. And also, I think that, the witch hunt played a huge part in all of that level of paranoia that existed in Hollywood. And not just because of I think when people hear me talk about the witch hunt, sometimes they think, oh, he's getting political again.
Yeah.
You got to understand that the politics of the witch hunt were just a thing that I mean, that was one aspect of it. The witch hunt was used as a weapon to settle scores, to ruin careers. The politics didn't really matter. It was just suddenly an opportunity to get even. If you hated somebody in Hollywood, you could destroy them by just saying, I saw him at a couple of Communist Party meetings. It didn't even have to be true.
Yeah.
And you could destroy them. And there was an aspect of anti-Semitism to the witch hunt that was just overwhelming. And so all of that, to see, and the writers definitely took this to heart, and, they started writing scripts that reflected that. Even if they didn't address it directly, it was seeping into all of that stuff they were doing. And crime movies were a perfect outlet for it. Abuse of authority, don't trust authority figures, the system is rigged against you. All of these things were palpably felt in Hollywood at that time.
Yeah, and I think also, but the audience was also receptive to it. Is a really significant thing, because I think that we tend to look at, post World War II America in really idealistic terms that you kind of see with the television programming. But the reality was, I think a lot of people, I mean, the war was really disruptive. That was a huge thing to have lived through, both at the home front, people lost their kids, their husbands, and then you had people coming back with PTSD and having a difficult time readjusting. So I think that the audience was also, like, those films coming out that time also matched, I think, where the audience kind of was.
Yeah, exactly. Because there are people, when a cataclysmic event like that happens, like I'm not equating it in any way, but like we've all just been through the pandemic and COVID and everything. And there are people who want to say, see, it was nothing. Let's get over it, move on.
Yeah.
And then there are people who say, well, wait a second, there's something to be learned here. We have to take a lesson away from this. And I think that's what you saw in America in post World War II was people said, okay, we won, move on. The world now conforms to us because we are the winners, And then there were other people saying, do you have any idea how horrific that was?
Yeah.
And how do we stop that from happening again?
Yeah.
Right. And they weren't willing to let it go quite so fast as some people wanted, and that was to me, that's a big part of why it happened when it did. Okay.
We're on this is my turn, I think. This is from Yaski. I hope I am pronouncing that correctly. In Finland.
Isaki, maybe?
Isaki? I don't know. I don't know.
Finland. This is great. We have Australia.
And Finland,
and Finland. Yes. And Chicago.
And Chicago. A couple Chicagos this time. The Naked City, 1948, is one of my favorite film noirs. Because it's shot almost entirely on location. Can you recommend other film noir movies that are also shot on location similarly? If there aren't that many film noirs shot on location, you could recommend non-noir, but from the same time era, 1930s to 60s.
Interesting. That's an intriguing question because, let's face it, I've been immersed in noir for years now. I'd be curious to know what other shot on location films from that era that aren't a crime film. I can't off the top of my head think of any really. That's well.
No, there's the Gene Kelly movie, On the Town.
Oh, On the Town, yeah, where they're in New York.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, okay, very good. That's the musical. But as far as Cry of the City has great location stuff in New York as well. Call Northside 777 has good Chicago location footage, as does City That Never Sleeps, which is one of my favorite lesser known noir films, Republic Picture from 1953. There's A Kiss of Death has a few on location things. Fox did most of those are Fox movies because Fox was more inclined to go shoot on location, like with House on 92nd Street and stuff like that. They were the. I don't like the term semi-documentary because it's a misnomer. Most of those films they call semi-documentaries are just shot on location, but that became the term they used for them. And of course, there's a bunch of stuff in San Francisco, like Woman on the Run is a shot on location film by and large. And, a lot of stuff in LA, obviously. But it's just.
I was going to say for shot in LA, I think Chicago Calling is one of the best. Like that has a lot of location work and kind of unusual location work too.
Chicago Calling is like the great downtown LA movie. Yeah. It's like a great look at Bunker Hill, and that is terrific. It's a drama that it's not totally a noir film.
No, but it's not. I don't know if I'd even really consider it a film noir. To me, it's more of just.
But Dan Duryea is in it, and it's one of those things. It's like when you get certain actors who are synonymous with noir, and then you put them in something that is kind of borderline noir. It kind of gets an honorary status.
Yeah.
It's like Clash by Night, right? It's like directed by Fritz Lang.
A film noir.
And it's not really a film noir. It's just a domestic drama, But it's got Stanwyck and Robert Ryan, and it's directed by Fritz Lang, and it's shot by Burnett Guffey or somebody, or Nick Musaraka. It's shot by Nick Musaraka. So it has to be a film noir. I got into an argument
when I managed a video store with one of my employees over that movie, and I finally just relented and let him put it in the film noir section, even though it sucks.
But who wouldn't want to watch a movie with Barbara Stanwyck and Robert Ryan and Paul Douglas, Marilyn Monroe,
Their
So if
chemistry is so insane in that. I just, God, that scene when they kiss and she shoves her hand up the
up his
back of his
shirt
own.
and scratches his back, yeah, that is pretty wild. And of
Oh,
course, Stanwyck sitting in a bar drinking brandy at like 8 o'clock in the morning is pretty awesome.
yeah.
So, so there's something about her character that I love that character,
Yeah.
May Doyle, that she's been around the world kicked her ass. She's coming back home. She's a hard woman. And,
Yeah.
it's a really good performance. As though Stanwyck is capable of a bad one.
Yeah, I was gonna say it goes for everything.
But those are some I'm just throwing out there. I really there are plenty more, of course, and then when you get later in the cycle, you get great stuff like Odds Against Tomorrow, which is spectacular on location stuff. Or if the closer you creep to the 60s, the more you get location shooting, like The Burglar in Philadelphia is
Mm-hmm.
shot on location, and Blast of Silence, obviously in New York, is all like a stolen movie. It's all
Yeah.
like shot on the streets and without permits and everything, and it's pretty fantastic. So, those are the significant ones. I think I hit on a maybe
Yeah.
10. I hope I got
Yeah. I
10
think
there.
so. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Ryan from Studio City, adjacent to Valley Village, California. Are there any female-led detective noirs from the classic noir period? Okay, he means like Maltese Falcon or Where My Sweet, but with a female detective. Um, he says the only contemporary film I can think of is Karen Kusuma's Destroyer with Nicole Kidman, which was excellent. Did you see that? Did you see Destroyer?
I have not seen Destroyer. I'm writing that down.
I highly recommend it. It's great. Nicole Kidman she's fantastic in that movie. It's a very unexpected performance, and if it wasn't so identifiably a genre picture because it's a crime movie, she would have. That was like I can't believe I'm going to say it's like an award-worthy performance because I don't give a crap about awards and stuff, but that performance deserves to be more well known because it is totally against type. She looks horrible in that movie. I mean, and it's good, and her action scenes are great. It's a terrific film. But from the classic era, I mean, I would I don't even have to argue. I just have to say that Phantom Lady is a detective story with a female
Mm-hmm.
detective, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
Ella Raines is the detective in that
Mm-hmm.
movie. She's not doing it for money; she's doing it for love, which
Yeah.
makes it even better, right? And I would argue that although she is not the detective, Lucille Ball in The Dark Corner,
Mm-hmm.
and even Lucille Ball in Lured, even though she
Mm-hmm.
is the bait, she's not the detective. She is the protagonist of the film, and drawing a serial killer out of hiding. That's a good female protagonist at the center of like a whodunit mystery. And The Dark Corner is great. And this is a hard one to find, but our dear friend Marsha Hunt did a film, I think in 1949, called Mary Ryan
Mm-hmm.
Detective,
Yeah.
that was supposed to be the first in a series of B movies featuring Mary Ryan Detective. And it's pretty good. It's fun. It's very amusing. It like has a turkey farm in it or something, and they're stealing fur coats. There's like a fur coat theft ring or something. And of course, Marsha is just absolutely stunning in it, and just she's great.
Yeah.
So that's kind of fun. Hard one to find.
You shot it at North City though.
I did show it at
That's where
Noir
I
City
saw it.
one time. I'm just saying it's never been put on video or DVD or anything like that. I it's a Universal picture, I think. I think it was from Universal. But I think um, that's about it. There might
Yeah.
be some other ones I'm kind of forgetting that are B movie serials, like they're not a detective, but like, stuff like Torchy Blaine and stuff like that are female reporter tracking down the
Hmm.
stuff. And um but as far as features go, I think that pretty much covers it. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Somebody who's watching will be sure to add in some additional ones that are slipping my mind right now.
Yeah, and like in terms of books, the only person I can really think of is in the Nero Wolf novels. Yeah, Archie is his regular, right? Archie is his constant, but sometimes he has like a group of other detectives that he hires on jobs if he needs more people. And one of them is Doll Bonner, who is a female private detective that started her own agency, and she hires other women. And it's pretty cool, and she's in some of the novels. And I think he spun her off and she got one standalone novel as well. But I think that Stout had kind of hoped that he could have had a series with her.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna at this point, since you brought up books, I'll throw in a pitch for our friends Vince and Rosemary Keenan. Vince, the former editor of the Noir City magazine prior to Imogen taking over, but they write a series of books with a character named Lillian Frost, who is a young wannabe actress who becomes a detective, and it's very much in the Nero Wolfe spirit, with Edith Head playing the Nero Wolfe part,
Yeah.
and Lillian Frost is the Archie Goodwin, and they're great old Hollywood stories because they're all based on some true.
Yeah.
The background in the books is all very accurate, but then they concoct a mystery for Lillian and Edith to get involved in. And usually Lillian's out doing the legwork, and then she comes back to Paramount and consults with Edith, who tells her inside gossip that she hears from the stars and the directors and stuff. Very, very amusing. The books are
Yeah,
great.
they are. And I have to say, because I've read like a couple different um authors kind of doing that, like setting stuff in classic Hollywood with the characters of being, so sometimes with famous people being in. And I really like those the best out of the stuff I've read. Just the way they integrate her arc. It feels very natural
Yes.
when these people are involved in the story. It doesn't feel forced. And she has a very compelling story of her own.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, those books are really great. So get those, buy those books.
They're really fun. You'll enjoy them.
Okay, you go.
I have a two-part question about Gloria Grahame. And this is Marjorie from the poor part of Connecticut, not myself. What did you think of her Oscar-winning performance in The Bad and the Beautiful, which I only just saw for the first time? And Eddie, are you happy or sad that you watched the Gloria Grahame performance you said you were saving to watch, Man on a Tightrope? I think the first shot of her is extraordinary, and it's a wonderful film that I would never have seen without you selecting it.
Okay, I think her Oscar-winning performance in The Bad and the Beautiful is great. She's terrific. I do believe at that point it was the least amount of screen time to win an acting Oscar, so
Yeah.
that means you're making quite an impression. What was the? I'm trying to remember what the other film was that she maybe should have won the Oscar for, and then she won the Oscar for this because they were kind of making up. It was kind of a makeup Oscar. And now I'm drawing a blank and I can't remember what that was. But I have no regrets about watching Man on a Tightrope. I don't know, Anne, if you're following this question, but
I remember you mentioning that was one of the ones they were saving. Did you show it on Noir Alley?
showed it. No, it wasn't. It wasn't on Noir Alley. It was
I didn't
on
remember that.
TCM. It was on TCM with when I co-hosted with Dana Delaney.
Oh, right.
And so Marjorie is giving me credit for picking that movie, but I didn't pick the movie. Dana picked the movie because it was we were kind of, I guess we were paying tribute to Gloria Grahame because I think we showed. I can't remember. Dana appeared with me on Noir Alley, but we also did a separate thing
On Gloria Grahame, yeah.
on. I think it was on Gloria Grahame. Yeah. And or no, we showed Once a Thief, with Alain Delon and Anne Margaret, and we
Okay.
showed. And we showed Human Desire. That's with Gloria Grahame. And we
Right.
showed The Glass Wall with Gloria Grahame, and we showed Man on a Tightrope. So those, I think, were the 4 movies that we showed. And I had not seen Man on a Tightrope because I confessed to Dana that it was a film I was saving for my old age.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? I'm there now.
Yeah.
So I guess it's high time that I watched that one. And I thought it was great.
Yeah.
I loved it. I thought Frederick March was fantastic in that film.
Yeah.
And that Gloria was spectacular. She was wonderful. And I agree that first shot is amazing. And yeah, I have no regrets about now having seen that film. Thank you, Marjorie, for remembering that and asking that question. I'm out of them. I'm done though. I don't think I have another Gloria Grahame.
Oh no, they're all gone.
I think I've never seen Blonde Fever, which was the first movie that she did. I haven't seen that.
Yeah.
But other than that, I think I've seen them all now. So that's okay. All right. Eric says the femme fatales are constantly discussed and are the proper focus of the genre. Well, we know where Eric's coming from. Okay. Good women have no business on these mean streets except for Marlowe to rescue. Certainly not to rescue him, for God's sakes. James Elroy might disagree with you since he has told me that all of his stories are about men not realizing the women have come to be their saviors and they rebuke them and die as a result. What I'd like to know is how Anne Shirley got from PIE to Bay City. How did the spunky orphan from Green Gables wind up on the West Coast being raised by a policeman? How did she find her way into LA journalism and falling in with Philip Marlowe? I understand the actress took the stage name from her role in that earlier film. My wife grew up on Anne of Green Gables. I remember feeling kind of happy for Phil at the end of the movie. Not a very noir way to wind up. Well, you say that, but right? Raymond Chandler wrote that Marlowe was going to end up with Linda Loring and moving to Palm Springs and being a married man. That was like the way Marlowe was originally written by the guy who created him. So maybe this wasn't such a big stretch. I know that right? Anne Shirley was married to John Payne, was she not? I believe that was.
I don't think I knew that.
I think that was a union. For how long, I'm not exactly sure. I don't honestly know that much about Anne Shirley, but I will say that in terms of, it was a very Hollywood, as we all know, very Hollywood thing that the guy and the women had to end up together.
Yeah.
I mean, that was like a thing, and it worked the other way too. I mean, Mildred has to walk off arm in arm with Sam or whatever his name, Bruce Bennett at the end of, I don't think his name's Sam. I forget what his name is, but that was he was Sam in The Man I Love, right? And he leaves her, and then they walk off together, at the end of Mildred Pierce. Is that right? Who does she walk off with at the end of Mildred Pierce?
Yeah, it's her ex-husband.
It's her ex-husband. It's not Wally. She doesn't walk off with Jack Carson.
No. I would have gone for Jack Carson rather than Bruce Bennett personally, but
but same diffs. The women had to end up with the guy had to end up with the woman. It was considered like, it was weird if the person ended up alone at the end of the movie. It was somehow like, oh, we can't have that.
But you brought up The Man I Love.
Yeah, and where Ida is alone.
Ida's alone in that.
Which is honestly what makes that movie so great.
Mm-hmm.
And why I think that movie was specifically marketed to women whose men had gone to war.
Yeah.
It was specifically about women who had men who weren't coming back.
Yeah.
That was the whole thing. And that's why I love the end of that movie. I love just Ida's walk up the gangplank when she leaves the ship and she's crying and she knows she's never going to see him again. And then she just does that little thing where she kind of shakes it off and lifts her chin and like walks right into the camera, you know, with these tears in her eyes. Fantastic. That's just I won't call it soap opera because it's too good. It
Yeah.
transcends that, you know. It's just she's fantastic. And that little gesture where it's like it hurts, but I will survive is
Yeah.
is just fantastic.
And so
So
Ida too.
it
You know,
is
it's just a
so
great,
Ida.
yeah.
Um, so that's it. I don't have much else to tell you about Anne Shirley, and I don't know the story of, but I get what Eric is saying here. Like, you know, what is that all about? Like, we should do a thing in the magazine. Here's a good idea for a story. We should do a thing in the magazine about the worst hookups at the end of noir and the best hookups at the end of noir.
Yeah.
Like, who did you just hate it when they unite at the end of the film? It's like, oh Jesus, this is horrible, you know.
Yeah.
Or the ones where it's like, thank God that happened, you know.
Yeah, honestly, for me, like one of the big ones is Angel Face, but not Mitchum.
Oh
Even though I think the two of them deserved each other in one sense. But the woman that he was,
yeah, Don Barry and Mona Freeman. Yeah,
Mona Freeman, you know, she winds up with his buddy who's a much better man, and I've always loved that she's just like no, you don't get to come back.
yeah.
I'm really much happier with this guy, and I just so I love that about that movie.
And that is a really great scene. I love that scene where Mitchum comes back and he's like groveling, and she just says, "It's too late.
Yeah,
It's too late. There's the door. See ya." Because boy, talk about a woman with self-respect.
yeah,
I mean, she's like turning down Big Bob. You know, it's like no,
yeah.
no, no. If it happened once, it's going to happen many more times. There's the door, buddy. See you later.
He's so shocked.
That's good. That's a good call. Yeah. I always wonder, like, how do you feel about Thieves Highway? You know, because it's so different from the book. Because Richard Conte
Yeah,
comes back and Valentina Cortez is waiting for him, and then they jump in his truck and drive off. You know,
yeah,
and it's like I'm not sure how I feel about that one. You know, it's I like her so much, and
yeah.
that it's like okay, good. You know, but they'll be a fun couple. I'll bet you they'll be a fun couple wherever they end up. You know.
Yes. Driving their neighbors crazy between the fighting and the other thing.
Exactly. It's really noisy over there. I can't tell what they're doing, but
It's one or the other, we're not sure.
precisely. Precisely. Um okay.
Okay.
Where are we at now?
Where are we?
Okay. 11.
Do you think there's such a thing as transitional film noir? Opinions differ, but it seems some circles contend that transitional noir is movies that came out in the early 60s that serve as a bridge between classic noir and neo-noir. Or do you think anything from 1960 onwards is simply neo-noir? And that's Brett from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada.
I I think all films are transitional films, really, but I know what Brett is saying here. And yeah, there are definitely transitional films. And that era that he's mentioning, like 58 to 62 or 63, even a little further than that, like if you wanted to go to 65, those films are really transitional. You know, starting with like Touch of Evil, then Odds Against Tomorrow, something like Blast of Silence, the Paul Wenkos' The Burglar. They're changing. They're different not only in what they can show, but in how they're made. That they're more independently done movies that are just distributed by the studios, not really made by the studios. I mean, if you know, you know that double bill I showed at Noir City a few years ago of Breathless and Psycho.
Uh-huh.
as like this is when the movies changed, 1960. That was the whole point of that double bill, was that was a transitional double bill, taking classic noir B movie ideas that Godard did and then doing them in this totally new way, in the way he made that film. And then Hitchcock taking what starts as a noir story and turning it into a horror film and creating like the cinema of sensation is what
Yeah.
Psycho really gave birth to.
Well, it
But
gave birth to the slasher film
birth to the slasher film,
specifically.
and then
Yeah.
and I just recorded an intro for Noir Alley for Experiment in Terror, and
Hmm.
that's very much a transitional film as well, because it has many elements of an old policier. I mean, Glenn Ford is basically playing like the same character he played in The Big Heat, but the villain in that movie is totally new and would be very influential. He cross dresses at one point. He's asthmatic.
Yeah.
The way he terrorizes Stephanie Powers was, you would never see that in an older film. It's very graphic and really, really unpleasant. And it's so, yeah, all and then The Money Trap, that's another Glenn Ford picture that's very much a transitional movie. Yeah, so my answer to Brett's question is yes, there are absolutely transitional films, but it'll be interesting in a few years to see how we move that forward, because those were transitional, but then you realize, like in the early 70s, how many noir films were made by that new generation. Because I guess Paul Wenkos and Alan Barron, those guys were the new generation, right? But
Yeah.
Orson Welles, Robert Wise did Odds Against Tomorrow. That's old school films. Like, I even consider Blake Edwards to be old school at that point. And Burt Kennedy, who made The Money Trap, was kind of an old school guy. But then in the 70s, you see, Scorsese is making pictures, and, Taxi Driver's a noir film. And,
Well, so is
you
Mean
know,
Streets, I think.
Mean Streets is very, very noir savvy. I mean, he
Yeah.
has said that he kind of based the relationship of Charlie and Johnny Boy on the brothers in Force of Evil. And it's just all these things are kind of transitional. I mean, you look at a film like Chinatown, of course, in '74, was like the culmination of all the detective movies and novels that had been made before.
Yeah.
But how can it be a culmination when it has now given birth to a whole new way of telling those stories, right? Because
Yeah.
when you watch Perry Mason, they're taking so much from Chinatown,
Yeah.
of the look of Los Angeles, of the way scenes are directed. There was a scene the other night I saw where Perry Mason goes into this, like uh, like a sanitarium or something, and he does the exact thing with the ledger book that Jack Nicholson does in Chinatown, where he kind of spins it around and does the thing and then sneaks off. It's like a classic detective story scene, but man, it was everybody who worked on that scene said, yeah, this is like the thing in Chinatown.
Yeah.
You could just tell that's exactly what they were doing.
Yeah. And I think also that I think noir has really gone into television more than films, right? Because I think now people don't really want to make a neo noir because it's not guaranteed to make money. They haven't, the last couple that's been released not done particularly well. So I think you're seeing that ethic much more in kind of longer form television, the ones that tell like a single story,
Yes,
especially
I
like something
agree.
like Better Call Saul and those kinds of things. And I think that that's just kind of where noir has moved.
Totally, because it's marginal. I mean, that's the thing that people that they have to understand. It's like noir has always been marginal. It's. I think I described it to somebody the other day. As they said, "Well, how come I don't know about this?" And I said, "Oh, because noir is the alleyway off the main drag.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not the place where everybody wants to go, right? I mean, it's a certain type of person that really responds to this stuff and loves it so much. because there's a negativity to it that
Yeah.
a lot of people don't want. They don't want to embrace it. And I just think that those films will always, noir films will always appeal to a smaller audience than like a mainstream romantic movie or a superhero movie or a monster movie even, or even horror films tend to appeal to a, like I was saying about Psycho ushering in the, cinema of sensation. There are people who want that sensation from a horror film.
Yeah.
You don't get that necessarily from a noir film. Noir films make you think a little more than the average horror picture. So I think horror is going to appeal to a bigger audience than noir.
Even though actually mainstream horror doesn't do very well. I mean, there's like a core audience, but those are significantly lower budgeted films
Yes.
for a reason. They're
Yes.
not like superhero films and things like that. And also, so you only really get, you don't get that many ones that are like big pictures. Like I would say like the Scream or the Halloween films that came out in the past couple of years. I mean, that was for more, whereas something like X and Pearl, I don't think are going to have nearly, they're not going to cross over into the people that occasionally will watch a horror film. Stuff like that doesn't cross over.
Correct. Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. But of course, if the movie doesn't cost as much to make, then this is why the Coen brothers are so fantastic, because they have their formula that their films don't have. They've become preeminent filmmakers of their generation without ever making a film. I guess No Country for Old Men might be the exception, but all these other films, they're not hits. They're not big movies. Inside Llewyn Davis is not a movie that most of America has seen. So, but they do it because they don't spend a ton of money.
Yeah, and that's why, like the past couple of years, also horror films have gotten like really creative. Like the ideas are really smart, and characterization and stories have gotten so good. And part of it is because, because as a writer or in a director or a writer / director in horror, you don't have that studio pressure because no one cares because there's just not investing that much money. So a lot of, I think that's why I hate this term elevated horror. Hate that term. But that's part of why you're seeing that kind of shift where you're getting like a lot of really creative ideas. Since like Barbarian was really good. Because there's just not that much risk, and you've got a baked in hardcore audience. That's the thing with horror, right? Is you've got people that will pretty much see anything unless it's really terrible. And if it's really terrible, word gets around and it bombs. But it's a guaranteed audience, and you're just not spending the money.
Yeah. I mean, it's like the old days in exploitation films and stuff. I mean, directors could come up and cut their teeth on that stuff and learn to make movies and have their creative freedom as long as they gave the producer with the money what they wanted. So the producer would say, is there a car chase? Is there a gunfight? Does she take her clothes off? And that's it. If you've fulfilled that part of it, it's like, good, go do whatever you want to do and play around and have fun and blah, blah, blah. But as long as you fulfill what I need to get an audience in the theater, we're okay. And you can do that with horror movies, and you can, they don't care if you're a bad director or the greatest director of all time, as long as you hit the bullet points that they need to sell that movie, right? Yeah.
Okay.
I'm forgetting where we are.
We're on 12.
Okay, Alan, our buddy Alan in San Anselmo wants to know what we thought of the Gene Hackman in the remake of The Narrow Margin. Did you see it?
I did. I saw it in the theater when it came out.
Yeah, so did I. That was a long time ago.
That was a long time
ago. I saw pictures of Gene Hackman recently. He's like 92 or something, and
it's not possible.
I know it's hard to believe, isn't it? That he was walking around, so that was good. I didn't like it. I like Ann Archer. I mean, Gene Hackman is fine, but I like Ann Archer. I'll tell you that. But I thought they made a mistake opening up the movie.
Yeah.
I mean, what makes The Narrow Margin, the original, so unique is that once you get past that fantastic first 10 or 15 minutes,
Yeah.
Once they get on the train, they're on the train.
Yeah.
And it's very claustrophobic. And of course, being a modern movie, they had to have an action scene on top of the train.
Yeah.
And it was like, holy cow, and I believe there's much more stuff. It doesn't have the same claustrophobic feel that the first one does, and it doesn't have the same incredible momentum
Yeah.
that the first film had. It's more of an action picture, which the first one, I mean, has a great fight scene, but not really an action picture. But that's what I was just saying. As long as you give the producers what they want. Years ago, I read the script for they were going to do a new version of The Thin Man.
Yeah.
Right, with Nick and Nora. And I read the script. This guy named Billy Ray, the screenwriter Billy Ray, wrote this script. And the very first scene is on a train.
Yeah.
And I thought, cool, Nick Charles in like the observation deck having a martini, on a train. Yeah. Good idea. Yeah. In 3 pages, he's on top of the train in a fist fight with like 10 guys trying to kill him or something. And it's like, wait a second. This is Nick Charles, for Christ's sake,
Uses this.
Unbelievable. And I just said, God, I hope this never gets made.
Oh, did you see? I guess they're making. Is this true? They really were making Vertigo? I mean, it was a variety, so I assume it's true.
Well, I mean, that's. I heard
really
that.
Thing? Yeah. Okay.
I heard that. Here, let me address that and just get it out of the way real quick, because when they said they were going to do a new version of The Thin Man.
Yeah.
I said, well, there aren't too many people who could do that, but maybe Robert Downey Jr. would be an okay Nick Charles, right?
Yeah.
I could see that, right? At one point, many years ago, I thought maybe Johnny Depp, but Johnny Depp is carrying way too much baggage now.
Yeah.
To do that, and he's too old now, right?
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, Robert Downey is really too old, but it's so funny, isn't it, how we think of William Powell as a full-grown man, and yet he's half the age that Robert Downey Jr. is now.
Oh, wow.
In those movies. Yeah. He's like half his age.
But he's such like a grown-up.
Yeah, but that's just a cultural thing more than anything else, I mean, we don't encourage people to act like adults anymore.
Yeah.
Not that Robert Downey is, his wild days are behind him, right? I mean, he's a full-grown adult now. But it's just funny that I can never think of him as being ever as old as William Powell.
Yeah.
But William Powell, when he was Nick Charles, was like half Robert Downey's age. And Downey could play the part now. But anyway, I only bring that up because he's the one who is talked about as being the Jimmy Stewart character in the remake of Vertigo, because it's his production.
Oh.
Robert Downey Jr. and his wife are the producers of the Perry Mason TV series.
I did not know that.
Oh, yeah. That's their show. So, and based on that show, I'm sure they could do a decent adaptation of Vertigo. What I don't understand is why they have to call it Vertigo.
Yeah.
Why they wouldn't just do a movie, because there have been many of them, right? Obsession with Cliff Robertson is
my favorite. That is my favorite De Palma film. I
love
that movie.
It's. I mean, that was clearly Paul Schrader riffing in his screenplay. Just that was his take on Vertigo, right? Yeah. And De Palma, of course, owes everything to Alfred Hitchcock. So, but did they need to say it was a remake of Vertigo?
Well, but Vertigo came out like in a poll as being like the greatest film of all time, which I highly disagree with. So I think that's part of it, right? It's just that Vertigo is sort of in the zeitgeist more than it probably ever has been in the past couple of years. People
it
know what
just,
it is what I'm saying. It's,
yeah.
you know, why
But
do they
it's just
remake?
weird. It's just weird that they're like picking the bones of these films that aren't bones yet. I mean, the film, Vertigo is still a great film if you watch it today. So why the necessity to remake a great film? Why not remake a film that they fucked it up?
Yeah,
Sorry, but it's like this should have been a good film. Here's obviously how they screwed it up. Let's do that one. But they're too lazy. They're too
yeah,
lazy to think like that. It's like, no, we're going to take an undisputed classic and we're going to do a new version of it. And it's like, that you're going to get pilloried for that.
right,
That
exactly.
there isn't a single person that's going to say, except if they're 18 years old, that this version is better than the original, right?
I mean, I think it would only work if you really maybe did it more from the point of view of the two women in the film, both,
Well,
the Barbara Bel Geddes character and the Kim Novak character. Like, if you made it more from their point of view, I think that could be like a really interesting film.
it's interesting you say that because that's my reply when people say, but Vertigo isn't really a film noir, is it? And I say, think about it from the woman's point of view,
Yeah.
specifically Kim Novak, from,
Uh-huh.
Judy and Madeline Elster. She is manipulated through the entire film. And then she thinks she's getting away
Yeah.
once she fulfills her role in the plot. She thinks she's getting away. And then the victim of the plot turns out to be worse, a crazier person than the Gavin Elster who talked her into this nonsense in the first place. And then she can't get away from this guy.
Yeah.
So she's trapped twice in the storyline. And like that is the noir, the most noir part of the story. It's weird. It's hard for people to see that in some of these older movies. Like I always say the same thing about In a Lonely Place. It's like it's Bogart's story for half the film, and then it switches and it
Yeah.
becomes Laurel Gray's story, and she's the protagonist and he's the antagonist at the
Yeah.
end. Like, is she going to survive this guy? And it's kind of the same thing in Vertigo. Like it's his story, and then all of a sudden, when Judy reappears, you sort of have to start thinking about it from her point of view. And once he reveals that it's the same woman,
Yeah.
then you have to think from her point of view and realize the horror of him dragging her through all of this and put her clothes on and come with me and all.
Yeah.
It's terrifying, So it would be good if I mean, it's all there in the original one. It's just that culturally, I don't think people understood how to look at it from that perspective back then. It was just
Yeah.
like Jimmy Stewart. It's about the guy. The
Yeah.
movie's about the guy. And I'm sure Alfred Hitchcock felt the movie was about the guy.
Yeah.
But when you watch the film, I mean, you can't help but feel sympathetic towards that woman.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, I that's one of the reasons why I don't not huge. Like I've seen it enough. Like I've seen it a couple times because I find him so despicable. I just don't. It's really hard for me to sit through that movie because he's such a truly fucking awful person.
Okay, now we know how you feel about
Now
that
you know
one,
how I
Ann.
feel about it.
Okay, now TB. This next one is from
Yep.
TB. I think you're reading it.
I am reading it. Okay. I became enthralled by your Noir Alley gems by watching Los Angeles City of Film Noir documentary 7 or 8 times. Each time a new layer of delightful nuance unfolded. Eddie, you've mentioned you've watched films several times. Is there, in your or Anne's opinion, an optimal number of times a film should be watched to truly appreciate its many facets?
Uh-oh, is that Charlotte or Emily behind you?
That's Emily
Emily
on
has
the red
risen.
pillow. Yeah.
Emily has risen.
Yeah, and Charlotte's right behind her, but the pillow's ivory, so it's hard to see her little white butt. You can see her little
Okay,
white butt.
very good. TB, who is a henchman contributor.
Thank you.
No, I do not believe there is an optimum number of times. I think once is the optimum number of times. Uh, I don't think that I don't think that normal people watch movies more than once. And I think that if you're a filmmaker, I would be embarrassed if I wrote a book. I would be embarrassed if somebody said I just didn't like it, I couldn't finish it. I couldn't, in all honesty, say to them, "You need to read it again."
Yeah,
You need to read it
yeah,
again to truly understand it. It's like, nope, you had your chance. If you didn't get them the first time, then you did something wrong,
yeah,
right? Or else it's just not somebody's thing. The movie just didn't resonate with them. You know, I mean, Tar is a movie that's a new movie that just divides people so completely. Like some people think it's the greatest movie ever, and other people are like, "Who the hell needs to watch this thing?"
yeah,
So same thing with the deal that won Best Picture. Everything, everywhere, all at once.
yeah.
I mean, I know people who couldn't get through 10 minutes of it, just turned
Yeah.
it off and said, "I cannot deal with this at all." Um, anyway, so now having said that, TB, that's just like, okay, so I've seen In a Lonely Place maybe 20 times. I've seen
Uh-huh.
Psycho probably 60 times. I've seen Chinatown at least 40 times. But I'm watching them for a different reason.
Yeah.
I'm really studying the films in many cases. I
Yeah.
just really want to see how Roman Polanski achieved that incredible elegance in his direction, like how the film is cut, how John Alonso is lighting certain things. All that stuff is very interesting to me. Does it deepen my appreciation of the movie? No, the movie was never better than the first time I saw it. It didn't get better as I watched it more and more. My appreciation of the artistry that went into making the film certainly improves. I mean, you can't say that Psycho is better the 10th time you see it than the first time you see it.
Yeah.
I mean, every narrative film is created for the experience of seeing it once.
Yeah.
Then if you start watching it too many times and you see how the tricks are done and you see these things, that's only for people who have a vested interest in understanding that stuff. But movies are made for people who don't understand that stuff, right? So
Yeah. But
anyway.
I think too, I mean, like for me, I typically rewatch films for pleasure because I enjoy them. So I watch them again. And sometimes it's interesting because you do pick up on stuff that you didn't catch the first time around, or sometimes like God, I can't believe I did this, but I was feeling kind of down a couple weeks ago. So I watched Flickering Lights again, which I think I'm up
Mm-hmm.
to 7 times at this point. And one of the things I realized was, oh, how much Riders of Justice, the endings call back to each other, where the person who's the driving villain winds up just getting decimated, and they both ask the same question: the
Huh.
why? And it was so funny because it's like, oh my god, that's, I forgot that that's like the same question for different reasons. And also, then sometimes too, if you're getting into foreign films, sometimes you learn cultural things. So then when you go back and watch something, sometimes you just pick up on stuff you didn't because you didn't know as much about the culture. And you're like, oh, because like in Flickering Lights, the main villain's Norwegian. And there's just some stuff they say like I understood better because I've learned more about that part of the world,
Right.
about why the Norwegian character and sort of what the language difference was about, which I didn't really catch the first time around I watched it. I don't know. I mean, but for me personally, like last night, Ted came over. For people who don't know, Ted is our webmaster, and we get together every Saturday night for movies. And I got him to watch Your Next, which is an incredible film. It's a home invasion movie, which I normally don't like,
Ooh,
but
no, I'm not a big fan.
but it winds so it's a family gathering, and it winds up that one of the girlfriends of the brothers grew up in Australia in a survivalist compound. So when these people break in to kill them, things take a different turn because she is just like, I mean, it's amazing. And the stuff around the family is really well set up. It's just very well written characters and that kind of stuff. But so there's something that you find out at the end of the film. So when I was watching it with Ted, it was kind of fun knowing the ending because I saw how well they kind of foreshadowed things, and not really without foreshadowing it, but it was very believable when you got to the end because of things that they had set up at the beginning. You know what I mean? And so sometimes that's fun too, because then it does give you an appreciation. Because then the ending, you realize, oh no, this didn't like come out completely out of the blue. Like they just threw this in at the end to be surprising. They did set it up. You just didn't know what was going on. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no set number. It depends on why you're watching it again.
Yeah.
If you're watching it because you love it and it's comforting, like how many times can you watch Singing in the Rain? Like endlessly, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just great. I mean, musicals you can watch over and over again if you love the music, right? I mean, I'll watch the movie if it's ever on and I happen to be just flipping by or something is Mulholland Drive.
Yeah.
It sucks me in every single time I have to watch it because see with David Lynch movies, I feel like you can watch them a lot.
Yes.
Because there's so much stuff going on and so many nuances to it. And like, is he actually doing this? And the way he makes things, he leaves so much open to interpretation that it's just fun to kind of immerse yourself in it and imagine what stuff means or doesn't mean or whatever. So those things are endlessly watchable as far as I'm concerned. I mean, Twin Peaks I'm looking forward to going back and watching Twin Peaks The Return again, just because it's a trip. I mean, it's like one of the craziest trips ever. You have no idea where that thing is going at any given time. So it merits multiple viewings, Anyway. Okay. Oh, in Hermosa Beach. He says, simple question. In your opinion, who is the toughest male protagonist in the history of classic American film noir? If Jesus Christ fought Superman, who would win? Okay. My definition of toughness would be a character who is not intimidated by anybody. So my nominee would be Jeff Bailey from Out of the Past. Hard to argue with Mitchum, because we know that he was legendarily, well, tough in terms of not intimidated, but kind of a sap. I mean, he played a sap in a lot of movies.
Yeah.
Right? He wasn't intimidated by men, but he was a sap for women. We know that. I mean, it's hard to go against Lawrence Tierney. I mean, Tierney was aggressively tough. I mean, scarily tough. But I can't really argue against Joe's choice. Do you have a particular?
Yeah, because because when I read this question, like I started thinking one way, and then I went back, and my definition of toughness would be a character who's not intimidated by anybody. And I was thinking, well, Sam Spade.
Yeah, Bogart is pretty.
I mean, he's so fun, and especially Sam because he's also not a sap for women.
Yeah, there you go.
You know what I mean?
I mean, Bogart's a pretty good one. Yeah,
nobody's full.
Well, it's funny. So do you think he's asking about? I guess he does say Jeff Bailey in Out of the Past. So he's not asking about an actor across a number of roles. He's just talking about a particular character in a movie that was a tough guy. So I guess if I'll take those two, Sam Spade and Jeff Bailey and Out of the Past. Although Spade has to be tougher, right? Because he doesn't end up dying in a hail of machine gun fire
he does not.
at the end of the film.
He is
right?
just fine.
He doesn't. No, it's fine. I'll have a few sleepless nights, but I'll get over it. Yeah.
Exactly.
There you go. Okay, and lastly, here you go. Take us out on this one, man.
Okay, so Brian Frattorano sent 5 questions, and so they will be split up into 5 different episodes, just so Brian knows that. And this was literally the first question he asked. What is the best film noir? This is a difficult question to answer. There are many great film noirs that could be considered the best. Some of the most highly acclaimed films in this genre include The Maltese Falcon, Double Indemnity, Out of the Past, and Touch of Evil.
Yes.
So what do you think, Eddie? I want you right now to say what the best film noir is, and then I can clip it out and put it up on the internet.
I saw the other day when I happened to be on social media for 10 minutes or something, I saw somebody said, can you believe there are actually people that say Double Indemnity when Touch of Evil exists? And it's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
The thing about this is I don't have any interest in calling something the best.
Yeah.
Because that is entirely a subjective decision on every individual's part. Because saying it's the best is like saying it's my favorite, in a sense. But if you asked me what the definitive film noir is, which to me is a question that I'm more comfortable with, like if you had one film to show to somebody to explain to them, this is film noir. It is Double Indemnity. It is Double Indemnity.
Absolutely.
Or it is Out of the Past. It is one of those two films, because I don't really believe that Touch of Evil is the definitive film noir in the dynamics of the characters. It's a movie about a corrupt policeman and his being found out. That's not a classic noir story. The look of the film is amazing, but that's not the classic noir story. And The Maltese Falcon is a detective story, and it doesn't really look like classic noir the way Double Indemnity or Out of the Past look like what we know as film noir. None of these other films would have been possible without it.
Yeah.
But I don't think of it as the definitive film noir. That's Double Indemnity or Out of the Past, because the male-female relationships in those two movies are very much at the core of noir. The betrayal, the deceit, the trying to get away with something, but you can't outrun your past, all that stuff. That's all super emblematic of noir. So,
and also, the dialogue, how it's written and the looks of both those films. I mean, everything that you think of as noir is really well illustrated in those films.
I agree completely. I mean, The Maltese Falcon has great dialogue.
Oh my God. Yeah.
But you'll notice it's not quite as wisecracky and snappy as the dialogue in Double Indemnity or Out of the Past.
Yeah.
And Touch of Evil also has some great dialogue, but it's not noir. It's not classic noir dialogue.
Yeah.
There's none of that, wisecracky stuff. And the other thing is, the other factor that mitigates in favor of those two films is they both have the iconic voiceover, where the story is being narrated by somebody telling you the tale of their spiral into misery.
I didn't get the money and I didn't get the woman.
Precisely. And Touch of Evil and The Maltese Falcon do not have that.
Yeah.
So there you have it.
Yeah. And I think, like you said, it's really important to distinguish between, I think that's a good way to take that on, because otherwise, best really is my favorite isn't my favorite film of all time is really The Maltese Falcon, which I didn't really realize that until it's one of those things people ask you, and I was starting to think about what it's. Yeah, I think it's really, and there's a lot of reasons for that. I just think it's a perfect film. To me, that's just like a perfect film, and I love it. But and I have other things like The Burglar and Black Angel are personal favorites of mine for film noir, but I wouldn't be able to say that those were the best film noir in that sense. So I think your idea of sort of what typifies it the most is a much better way of looking at it.
And it's like this is like going to therapy or something. I mean, when people say, "Well, this is the best film," and then you say, "Well, why?" You will find out that when people explain to you why, they're telling you about themselves. They're not telling you anything really about the film because
Oh,
because the idea that it's the best. Well, you think something's the best when it hits these points, when it has these qualities. So now I know something about you. You're really not going to convince me that The Woman in the Window is the best film noir ever made. You're telling me what you look for in a film, not
yeah.
you know.
No, and I think the reason why I love the Maltese Falcon so much is I think that Sam Spade's like this incredible, like who doesn't want to be Sam Spade? Who doesn't want to always be the smartest fucking guy in the room?
And the
You know,
toughest, and the
and the
toughest.
toughest, and also like, able to walk away from romance because he's not going to be somebody's sucker. I mean, how could you not like, he's like, God, who doesn't want to be that? It's like the Thin Man movies. Let's face it, we all love the Thin Man movies because we want to be Nick and Nora.
Well, they're the greatest. I mean, it's so. Now think about that, Anne. Think
Yeah.
about what you just said. Sam Spade is the definitive noir guy. He navigates a totally corrupt world. He's self-reliant and independent. He needs no one. And he represents that character, that modern existential man, navigating the urban jungle.
Yeah.
Nick and Nora Charles, the greatest married couple in history,
Yeah.
both written by the same guy.
I know, isn't that amazing?
Both created by Dashiell Hammett. So, and people say, why do you admire Hammett so much? And it's like, well, there you go.
Yeah.
The guy only wrote 5 novels, and they pretty much every crime and mystery novel subsequently is a redo of one of those 5 books, right?
Yeah.
There's the Gang War book and Red Harvest. There's the Whodunit and the Maltese Falcon. There's kind of the weird occult novel is the Dane Curse. There's the political fixer. This is how a corrupt city is run in the Glass Key. And there's this fabulous, playful light mystery thing that he does with the Thin Man. And those, I could go right now to a bookshelf right here in my town and go through the mystery section. And I would almost guarantee you, if you leave out spy novels and stuff like that, that everything is one of those 5 styles of story, right?
Yeah.
And that's what he did. And people say, why didn't he write more? And it's like, because he wrote the 5 basic mystery novels right there, right? What else does he have to prove?
He couldn't do the Sherlock Holmes thing. It had already been done.
Yeah. He didn't, that wasn't his style because he was a different kind of detective,
Exactly. Yeah.
So anyway, okay, that was fun.
We're
back in the saddle. We're back in the saddle. Yeah. We're back doing it. Now, last question before we sign off. Are you geared up for the TCM Classic Film Festival?
Yes. So I've got my travel arrangements made. My dear ex is going to move in here with his 2 cats to take care of my cats. I'm gone. He's not feeling well, so I said just move into my place rather than trying to go back and forth to take care of him. So yeah, I'm all set. I'm super excited about Enter the Dragon. I'm going to be honest. That's the thing I'm the most excited about is seeing Enter the Dragon on the big screen again. So
it's too bad that John Saxon died because
I know
he would have been a good guest for that.
Oh, well, if John Saxon was there, you guys would have had to carry me out in an ambulance.
He has come to a Noir City before. We showed a picture called Cry Tough that he was in. Yeah. Anyway, I still haven't gotten my marching orders, so I don't know what I'm presenting.
No.
I put in my request. That's how they do it, right? I mean, it's a huge chore for the staff. I mean, early on, months and months ago, we put in our ideas for things to show.
Yeah.
And then I totally forget about it. And then months later, they say, well, we're going to do this and this, and maybe we're going to do this. But a lot of it is left up in the air because they try to get good guests or presenters or something. And then at the end, they kind of lay out the whole the whole festival on a grid,
Yeah.
and then we five hosts sort of dicker over who's going to introduce what and who's going to interview whom and this, and that hasn't been worked out. I mean, I
Yeah.
said I'd like to present this movie and this, and I want to interview this person, and blah blah blah, but I haven't heard back yet. So
Yeah.
I will be busy.
Yeah, yeah, and I have to say that this year I noticed that Keith Carradine is introducing a film, and it's funny because I'm probably just going to go see it because he's introducing it, because he introduced the Betty Davis film my first year that I went to TCM, and it was such a great introduction that I've been wanting to see him introduce something again, because just the way he talked about movies was really incredible. So that's kind of interesting too when they do have kind of more famous people introduce stuff. I get surprised by who's into what.
Yeah, I
And
know
it
what you mean.
and their take. And I also just wanted to say too, that like last year the best introduction I saw was I think his name is Daniel Bogle. He wrote Hollywood Black.
Yeah,
My God,
Donald Bogle.
Donald, sorry, yeah. And I saw his introduction to it's called I think it's called A Man Called Adam. It's the film
Yes,
where,
yes. Oh, with Sammy Davis. Yeah,
yeah, and he was
playing like
talking,
a Miles Davis character. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. And it was really interesting because he was talking about like Cecily Tyson and that, and how like people are actually angry about the way she looked. That was so weird to me because she was not like the black actresses that had really come before, because of course she wore hair close and natural, and then her features weren't soft. And but it was weird to me that that was something like that people would actually get upset about. And so having that kind of insight into things is really an amazing part of seeing the introductions,
yeah,
especially by someone who's really knowledgeable about something that I'm just not.
yeah. Donald is actually receiving a special award at the festival this year for his contribution, as a film historian
Yeah,
and stuff. He's getting this award this year, so that'll be great.
yeah,
And yeah, it is fun. I had a great pleasure last year of introducing The Third Man with Ernest Dickerson,
yeah,
the cinematographer and director. He shot like all of Spike Lee's early stuff,
yeah.
and he's just great. I mean, he loves movies so much, and we had so much fun introducing The Third Man that I'm hoping we get to do something else together this year. And if not, I'm hoping that I get to just go and see whatever he's introducing, because he's really really great. So anyway,
Anyway,
I will see you there,
yes.
and I'm excited. I got to stay strong. Those are long long days. Pardon me. And so it'll be great fun. I was gonna. The thing is, I was gonna say it would be really fun if we could do one of these from the TCM festival, but I doubt my schedule will accommodate that.
Yeah.
But we'll see what it looks like when I finally get the lay of the land, and if it seems remotely possible, maybe we could do it.
We can always try, but yeah, you're pretty exhausted too.
I
I worry about you when I see you down there.
Well, it is
So,
interesting because I have to. It's not like it's so exhausting. It's not like I'm running a marathon or
yeah,
something, but it's a lot of talking.
yeah,
A lot of talking, and if your voice starts to go, what good are you?
yeah,
I mean, that's it.
yeah,
I just stand there and talk, right? So
yeah,
yeah, I just came back from shooting a bunch of stuff in Atlanta for Noir Alley, and it was a lot. And like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you're starting to talk like this when you're doing the intro, and it's like, Eddie, can you drink some tea and take a break, and let's try this again? And so anyway, I'll see how I do. Okay, Ann, great fun.
it's great
And
seeing
everybody,
everybody.
thank you all for joining us and for the great questions and for the ongoing fabulous support of what we do here.
We appreciate it. And we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Certainly. Okay. Bye.
Bye.